Alright guys, today we're going to talk about the 7 Years' War. So the 7 Years' War, some historians call this the First World War because it's the first war to be fought on 5 continents and 3 oceans. So it's the first war to be fought not only in Europe but all over with all the colonies, and it's mainly between England and France. Now when you study American history, you know of this war as the French and Indian War because that was what the war in the American colonies was called. So the causes is all about competing for colonies. Britain and France are the 2 big dogs in Europe. Now remember, Spain lost all its power after the Spanish Armada failed to conquer England, and they essentially went almost bankrupt with that one attack. So they're fighting for colonies of the world, while Austria and Prussia, remember we talked about those with the 30 Years' War, the Peace of Westphalia, they get formed and they're one's Protestants, one Catholic, and they're not getting along, so they start going to war in Central Europe. Russia's threatened by Prussia, so they want to limit Prussia's control in Eastern Europe. So all this stuff, people are going to start picking sides, and it's going to turn into one giant war. So England is going to ally itself with Prussia. France is going to ally itself with Austria and Russia. In North America, England, of course, has its 13 colonies. France has the Native Americans. And in India, England has some allies and France has some allies. So, the war in North America, they're all going to be fighting over this territory right here. They want control over the Ohio River Valley. England is going to attack the French forts in this area. They're going to fail. George Washington becomes famous for this area of the war. He's learning under General Braddock. General Braddock dies. He has to take over command, and he gets the soldiers out of there, and he becomes famous for his role in keeping them safe. England will eventually win this part of the war when they go in 1759 and they conquer Quebec. They conquer the city of Quebec and they bring Canada under British rule. The Caribbean, remember, England has the stronger navy, so England is going to be decimating this area because they're going to keep the French sugar islands under their control. They're going to keep French ships from getting there and French supplies from getting out. So they almost always won every single battle they fought in the Caribbean. Africa, you're just going to see English raiders hitting a French trading post, trying to cause as much damage as they can to the French economy to try to get the French to essentially sue for peace. So in India, you have the French and their Indian princes versus the British and their Indian princes. The British end up winning, and they will push the French completely out of India and conquer all of India, and will hold control of India all the way into the 1900s. And then in South American Pacific, the Spanish and the Portuguese are raiding back and forth between the Spanish colonies. Remember, Spain has all this territory right here. Portugal has Brazil. Remember, Treaty of Tordesillas split this right here. Brazil is under the Portuguese control. England will come in and they will capture the Spanish colonial capital of Manila in the Philippines, which is going to be over here in Pacific Ocean. And they conquer this strategic point in the Pacific Ocean. Essentially, is important for the military because it helps them to keep watch on everything going on in the Pacific. Now, in Europe, England's not going to fight that much except if the Navy's involved. Prussia's being left on its own to essentially fend off the French, the Austrians, Russians. They are doing terribly at the beginning. Now, when the Russians' Tsarian dies, and the new Tsar, Peter III, he pulls Russia out of the war because he doesn't want to get involved with this anymore. So Russia pulls out. Now it's just Prussia versus France and Austria. Peter is assassinated 6 months later, leaving his wife Catherine, a Prussian princess, as Tsarian of Russia. So there's no chance of Russia coming back and helping the people at all. So Prussia has a better chance of winning this war, and they end up actually winning this part. Now, when the war ends, you have the Treaty of Paris. This is going to deal with all the colonial territory. See right here, this map, this purple is all French. When the war ends, it's all green and orange. France is only allowed to keep one of their Caribbean island colonies. England and Spain, they split it. France is forced to give Spain all this territory for getting them involved in the war. Britain is going to take Florida from Spain, but Spain gets the Louisiana Purchase, and then Britain gets Canada from the French. Now, the Treaty of Hubertsburg, that's going to deal with the war in Europe, and essentially it makes it so all the fighting in Europe was for nothing. Everything's returned to how it was before, and essentially everybody just wasted their time in Europe. Now, Native American tribes are excluded from all peace talks, and this is going to be very important because the Native Americans are not going to take this lightly, and they're going to start raiding the British colonies and the French colonies, Spanish colonies. They're going to start attacking back and defending their territory and keeping colonists from moving into the territory they just won from the 7 Years' War. So, the cost of the war. Over 1 million are dead. France and England, they both nearly go bankrupt. And I know with American Revolution, you learn about this in middle school, all those taxes. This is where the taxes come from. England is going to have to pay for this war, so they're going to tax the crap out of the colonists. They expect the colonists to pay for this, and the colonists didn't want this war. They didn't want any part of it. They wanted the territory. They're going to get screwed out of the territory. We'll talk about that with the American Revolution. And this war right here is what's going to cause the American Revolution and the French Revolution that we're going to talk about later. All right? So, 7 Year War is the starting point. You have this war. You have all this Enlightenment philosophy that we talked about. Jefferson, Locke, Hobbes, Montesquieu, all those people, and this war is going to cause people to realize they don't have to listen to their king, that they can start thinking for themselves, and they're going to start rebelling against the crowns. We will talk about the American Revolution, the French Revolution for the rest of the week, and go more in depth about how this war helped shape how we know the world today.